So, Christy,
Yeah.
what do you get when you combine a World War I veteran with an embezzler and a guy who tries to sell horses illegally to the French government?
With a limo driver, a stagecoach rider, and an illegal casino operator, Frank Snell.
You bet. And you know what? He was all in with that world famous Paradise Ranch.
Oh yeah? And with his larger-than-life persona, he kept the guests wanting more. He was quite the card.
Yeah, and he ruled that ranch with an iron fist. And his staff just couldn't stand him for it. So, Christy, you know what? You're right. He was quite the card.
In 1944, Frank and his business partner were charged with illegal gambling at the Paradise. They had roulette wheels, blackjack tables, and slot machines.
That's Snell, and it was that can-do, ask forgiveness later, fearless drive that made Paradise Ranch one of the finest dude ranches in America.
This is quite a story.
Frank Snell Jr. was born June 14, 1895 in Denver, Colorado. His father, Frank Sr., was a well-respected architect and builder in Denver.
He designed the Delos Allen Chapel House, which is on the National Historic Registry. It was used for filming the Father Dowling Mysteries in the late 80s.
After World War I, he was a stagecoach driver and later a limo driver in Los Angeles, transporting tourists to a resort area of Big Bear Lake.
He married his wife Lorette in 1921. In 1923, they were blessed with a daughter named Gail, born in Pasadena, California.
The couple moved to Colorado Springs, where Snell continued working in the transportation business.
He and his business partner, Joseph Chabot, owned and operated an automobile business in Manitou Springs that would take tourists to the top of Pikes Peak and other scenic locations.
But during World War II, fuel shortages caused Frank and his partner to start the Pikes Peak Stage Company. He would run stagecoaches up and down Ute Pass.
Sadly, in 1943, Lorette died at the young age of 49. In 1944, Frank married Lavera Davis, and later that year, he and his partner Joseph purchased the Paradise Ranch from its original owner,
Roscoe Cox. It was located 1 mile south of Woodland Park on Highway 24.
The ranch featured 18 cabins completely furnished in a Western motif, with the main lodge containing a soda fountain, dining room, dance floor, and a cocktail lounge.
Roscoe operated the ranch for about 7 years before Frank and Joe made their move and bought him out.
Frank Snell sounds like a fascinating character because he came here wanting to have like the best dude ranch and give the best dude ranch experience over the top.
During his time in California, Frank had become an avid collector of stagecoaches. In fact, one of the foremost in the country. He restored each one he purchased, making them fully operational.
And as a brilliant marketer, he offered stagecoach services to his guests at the ranch, including rides down to Colorado Springs, scenic tours, rodeos, and annual parades.
He offered free rides on Sunday for his guests so that they could attend any church in Woodland Park.
When I think about Paradise, I think about the big parades and the tally wagon, you know, and all the rodeos. It was just, he just knew what to do. It was what people wanted back there then, you know, they wanted to experience the West.
By 1949, Snell had 18 stagecoaches and tally-hos, which were faster-moving wagons in absolute pristine condition. He even had one shipped overseas from jolly old England.
It was also in 1949 that Frank bought out his partner and best friend Joseph for $200,000. He would now be the sole owner of the Paradise, and Frank had a vision.
Like other ranches in the Pikes Peak region, he offered horseback riding, overnight pack trips, fish fries, and rodeo activities.
And like the Herman ranches, Snell had a horse available for each guest. It was reported that the ranch had over 300 horses, including several ponies for the kids to ride.
But Frank wanted to do everything bigger and better. He knew the best way to separate himself from the competition was to offer a rough and tumble experience of a cowboy.
With the luxury and service of a 5-star resort.
I mean, everybody had really good home-cooked food here, but I think he brought out the steak and lobster on a regular basis. You know, amazing meals, hired good chefs, and that was probably, might have been something that brought people back year after year. They came for this amazing, marvelous food.
He hired world-renowned chef Antillon St. Ives, who served gourmet food in large, extravagant portions, followed by the finest desserts prepared by Snell's own personal pastry chef.
The menu included 26 entrees, appetizers, soups, and salad, representing food from all over the world.
And you could finish your evening with any drink of your choice at the lavish cocktail bar called the Paddock.
You know, the underpass between the Paradise that goes underneath Highway 24. The young girls used to sneak away at night to meet up with the cowboys in the rodeo arena over there. So it was a pretty exciting place.
Part of those westerns that, you know, people were watching was, you know, that cowboy mystique. You know, he was the man's man, and those women wanted one.
In 1952, disaster struck, and the main lodge burnt to the ground. The only thing remaining was the big chimney. Frank, in true audacious fashion, stated, "We'll build back bigger and better immediately."
And by early 1953, he built a new magnificent lodge for $500,000 with not one, but 4 large fireplaces. Every small detail was accounted for in luxurious style.
Frank's wife, Lavera, oversaw all the decor, making sure it represented a true Western atmosphere.
And a wing of the lodge was completed and could accommodate an additional 150 guests.
In 1960, they added a $160,000 outdoor heated swimming pool, along with a wading pool for children and a separate room for kids' activities.
2 full-time teachers kept the kids occupied while their parents enjoyed stress-free outings.
From what I understand, they offered child care services. So for couples who came with their families, the couples had a chance to do their own thing while the children were being watched and had their own activities to do.
Every Sunday, Snell would have an all-you-can-eat smorgasbord, and he would host his very own rodeo. Now most of the other ranches in the area would take their guests to annual summer rodeos.
But that wasn't good enough for Frank. He had rodeo grounds built right on his property.
And though it was not officially sanctioned, it gave the guests and competitors a thrilling experience. They opened each rodeo with 2 chuck wagons racing around the arena with cowboys galloping and weaving in between.
Because to me, I think of going to a dude ranch was the equivalent of going to Disneyland or going to Hawaii, because right now that's like the hot vacation. And it was something you saved for many people. But then of course you had wealthy people who could come every summer if they wanted to. But it was a big vacation.
But what made it even more spectacular was Frank Snell's famous chariot races.
You mean wagon races?
No, Christy, real chariot races.
He bought the old chariots from Ben-Hur, from the movie Ben-Hur, from Hollywood, because he had connections in Hollywood, quite a few. Metro Goldwyn Mayer used to vacation here in the early days, really early days, 50s. And so he had chariot races and he had chuck wagon races, very dangerous but exciting.
In its heyday, the Paradise Ranch was the most magnificent and largest dude ranch in the United States. However, today its presence is almost totally unknown.
That's right. Where it once proudly stood is now part of a long stretch of grocery stores and strip malls. Frank sold the ranch in 1970 to Texas businessmen who filed for bankruptcy by 1975. Over the years, the ranch fell into disarray and sections of the property were torn down.
The last remaining remnant were one of the 4 chimneys from the main lodge. It was finally demolished in 2017.
Frank and his wife retired to Fort Lauderdale. Frank passed in 1976 and Lavera shortly after in 1978.
Frank Snell was a man of ambition and drive. He was always willing to take a chance, but also smart enough to know when it was time to hang up his hat.